Hello, everyone, and welcome to Game Over. A great game for the Ottawa Senators today up against the Pittsburgh Penguins. A perfect, I guess you could say, rebound from 2 nights ago against the Buffalo Sabres. That game was tough. Me and Maude recapped that game, and overall, it was a pretty rough game in its entirety from top to bottom. The team put up some shots on net, but today, that was the perfect response you could have asked for whatsoever. A 5-0 win on the road. I was a little bit nervous going into this game, I'm not going to lie, because I think right now this team is at crossroads in a way. The team improves to 20-18-3 on the season as we hit our halfway mark in this 2024 and 2025 season for your Senators. And overall, it's been okay. It's been okay. There's been some stops and starts for sure, but this team seems like they're figuring out. I think they're coming out of a slump right now, but as of right now, they're not looking too bad. So I'll take it. Now the question is tomorrow, how are they going to rebound and follow up a great performance today up against Dallas, who is a better team? However, we will be on the road. So let's go through this game. Basically the first 3 minutes, Claude Giroux takes the puck from the half wall, passes it up high to Tyler Kleven, who takes a one-timer from the top of the key, and it goes in. And it beats Alex Nedeljkovic on the first shot of the game. That's so key for the Sens, because this team, if they put the puck in the net right away, they do a great job at locking it down. This team, like, their skaters have been great this year. And Levy and Marilainen, of course, gets his shutout tonight. We'll touch on that later about how we're going to kind of decipher the rest of maybe the next week on what we're going to do with our goaltenders, because Anton Forsberg has not been the best overall this season and recently. So that puts the Sens up 1-0 right away. And then they get another goal right after that. It was not Shane, or it was Shane Pinto, yes, on the power play, a one-timer in the slot, the bumper spot, which he does. I'm surprised he doesn't get more goals from there, to be honest. Giroux and him have a nice little connection there that we've seen throughout the years. He one-times it past Nedeljkovic and makes it 2-0 very early on, and that's when you start to feel good, because the Sens have been in a slump offensively. They really have. There's been some issues overall with just the cohesiveness, and maybe there's been a bit of frustration. They've had a lot of games on the road, though, right? So that's going to have some tougher matchups offensively. And then, of course, they go home 2 days ago and they just lay an egg. And those games are going to happen. I know a lot of people were, a little bit worried, and a lot of people were frustrated and didn't necessarily give up on the team. But the thing is that there's 2 playoff spots right now that are just available for this team to grab. They're right there. There's the top 3 in the Metro: Carolina, New Jersey, and Washington. Those 3 teams are fantastic. And in the Atlantic, you got Toronto, Tampa Bay. They've been on a little bit of a slide as of late, but they should be in the mix based off their goal differential. And the Florida Panthers. And then that leaves Boston and Ottawa and Columbus, Pittsburgh. Like, everyone's in the mix. Montreal's been in a playoff spot recently, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. So there's an opportunity for this team to go on a run. There really is. And based off of the analytics, I saw the other day, according to Dom Lechijan, I think is how you say his name, from The Athletic, there was a 60% chance of the Sens making the playoffs. And that they were 7th in odds overall in the Eastern Conference. Right ahead of Boston, actually, who were at a 40% rate. So, sorry, I'm going solo today, so should be interesting doing this by myself. But I remember I also did the last game against Seattle, where they also shut out the Kraken. So both my solo recaps have been shutouts. So yeah, let's get back to the game recap here. 2-0 Sens, and then the Penguins go on the power play right after that entire weird debrief to start the game, because for the first 5 or 10 minutes there wasn't a whole lot going on, and then boom, Bunting and Cousins get right into it, and Cousins was in the middle of everything today. I'm not sure if I could support everything that he was doing on the ice. That entire I don't know, fight with Bunting, if you want to call it that, that was interesting for sure. I'll call it 50-50 on that, to be honest, because I don't want to seem like I'm a biased Sens fan. There was the hit later on, which I think he caught him up high a little bit. You gotta control your body, especially. I know hockey's a fast game, but you're up 5-0. There's no real reason to be going out and throwing your body out there a little bit too much, right? Because you're already winning 5-0. I get it. Like, hockey's a hot sport, but in my opinion, I don't think he should have gone with that hit later on. It's all good, though. But Shane Pinto comes down the ice after 4 Penguins go below the goal line. Like, what are you doing? What kind of power play is that? Pinto comes out with the puck and has basically a 3-on-1 with Chabot and Greg, who join the rush in a flash. And Pinto, nice. Keep it nice and simple. You already scored in this game. You're feeling good. Shoot the puck, because he needs to get going a little bit more in the second half of the season. He has, I think, 12 points on the season. You need a little bit more from a guy who's a part of your core, basically. Like, he is your third line center. Makes it 3-0 for your Ottawa Senators. Keep it nice and simple. Have Chabot as the distraction, and Pinto buries it, makes it 3-0. The Sens head to the first intermission. The first intermission with a 3-0 lead right off the bat. So very impressive. An impressive response too, considering the other day this team actually had a meeting together. I think it was a players only meeting. And those are necessary. You don't need it after every 5 games or so. But when you lay an egg like you did against Buffalo, it's good to, just refresh the memory a little bit, in a sense. So they head to the intermission with a 3-0 lead, and they come back, and they have a power play after the end of the first period. Sidney Crosby slashed Thomas Chabot's stick a little bit too hard, and that sent the Sens to the power play to start the second period. And it's a scramble out front. Tkachuk's helmet gets ripped off. There's basically everyone in the crease, and Norris gets knocked over. He's on his butt, basically, and does a little tap pass through the legs of a Pittsburgh defender and lands perfectly on the stick of Drake Batherson, who's kind of corralling from the right side, takes the puck. He has an open net because Nedeljkovic is basically out of the play. He was knocked over, sort of, and I was wondering, because I thought that goal was actually going to not count at the start, because, the goalie's down and there's 6-7 guys in the crease. Like, you're kind of expecting for that to get called back, at least to start, and then they send the review out and everything, but they called it a good goal. And the thing is that the Penguins already called their not their timeout, their challenge. So it was a good goal to start with, and that sent the Sens up 4-0. So that's when you know that the game is kind of in wraps at that point. And, the Penguins were hot at this rate. There was a lot going on, with the Reinhart and Nedeljkovic thing. Way after the play, Nedeljkovic is at his bench basically getting water, and Reinhart goes and slashes his stick. Reinhart actually left the game later. It's around that time, actually, took a hit sort of from behind from, I think it was Blake Lizotte, and he was out for the rest of the game, so hopefully everything's good there. But the Sens are up 4-0. Things are looking good, and basically right after that, Chabot goes D to D, passes it over to Jensen. He takes a shot, tipped from Giroux, hits Nedeljkovic, and I thought we were headed to commercial break, but there was no whistle that went because Nedeljkovic never actually had the puck. I guess it was one of those off games for him. And that happens when you're a goaltender, right? You're going to have at least 1 or 2 nights where you look back on the season and you say, how did that happen? Was it my preparation? Or was I just off the entire game? So then Stützle very smartly identifies that the puck is not covered, and he's in behind the net. And I guess I'm surprised he even saw this too, because he basically forced his way to the net. He pushed off of the net. He was so excited to get that puck. And he takes it right under his pad, basically, from behind, and sneaks it in and scores. So that's a big goal for Timmy, too, because he's also been sort of slumping in the past 10 or so games. And you got to wonder if he's banged up a little bit at this rate. I think that maybe him not being in the Four Nations could be actually a very good thing for his health for the rest of the season. But that was the last goal of the game. It was 5-0 halfway through the game, 30 minutes in, and the Sens kind of just lock it down for the rest of the game. There was a little bit of a surge there from the Penguins towards the end of the second period, but Levi Merilainen, oh my goodness, I waited a little bit to talk about him. This guy's looking good. He's looking good. Now, goalies, they could be anything, really, unless you're Linus Ullmark, who is a fairly consistent goaltender and is a starter in this league. You have no idea what Levi Merilainen is going to be in this league, really. He's 22. That is so young for a goaltender. You got to give him like 3 more years in the organization until you actually have a sense of what he is. But what I will say is right now, Levi Merilainen being in the net, I feel so much more comfortable him being in the net than Anton Forsberg. And I'm sorry, Forsberg, but you've had a long leash. Forsberg has had a long leash in the net for the Sens in the past couple of years. He had an .890 last year, had a winning record, so that's something to be said there, but was not good in the save percentage department for the past 2 seasons, I guess. I guess the 2023 season he was okay, just below average, I believe, but was not impressive, and I wouldn't say was worth the about $3 million price tag that he's making right now. So Merilainen being in net, there's going to be Merilainen and Forsberg in net for the next week or so before Ullmark comes back. And the Sens play tomorrow in Dallas. Tomorrow in Ottawa against Dallas. So who's going to be in net? Who are we going to throw out there? I'm inching towards Merilainen because it wasn't like he was okay today. He was great. He made all the saves he needed to. And that's what you want. Because the Sens, and we're going to dive into it a little bit in our second segment coming up here, the Sens overall in the defensive zone have been pretty good this year. Really. I know it's super easy to dunk on the defense and dunk on players like Hamonic because every team has a whipping boy, and the defense is the easiest one to call out. I swear that, like, other than maybe Winnipeg or something like that, there's got to be really no fan bases out there that are completely 100% fine with their defense. It's all about just being consistent with it, and the Sens have. Oh my goodness, they have basically from game 1 to game 41 so far this year. And with Merilainen in the net, you just need to make the saves, please, and make the saves early on too, right? You got to make the first 5 to 10 saves to give your team an opportunity to get to the lead. And the Sens can score. They have talent for days, right? So if the Sens get the first goal of the game, they have an excellent chance of winning that game in the end because they do a great job at tightening down low, and the way they protect the house and they collapse in front of the goaltenders is so impressive. And if you score the first goal of the game, then you can kind of just lock it down. And as long as your goaltender's kind of in sync, like Merilainen was tonight, you're going to have a pretty good performance. And with Forsberg, it's always that quick goal, I feel like, or that goal at the wrong time. And maybe sometimes it's not his fault. You can look at the Buffalo game. I don't think any of those goals were his fault overall, but you got to make the saves, right? That's what you're paid for. And Merilainen made all the saves tonight. I think he went 30 for 30, and that's another shutout for the Sens. I think that is their 6th, maybe 5th of the year. I think Linus has 3, Forsberg has 2, and Merilainen has 1. When is the last time this team had 6 shutouts in a season? I'm actually curious, because That's impressive. That's impressive. That shows you that this team can tighten it down, especially in the later parts of the season when offense is really hard to come by. I feel like I'm going to trust this team from games 65 to 82, and I'm confident in this team. I genuinely am. Even after the game against Buffalo the other night, Maude was probably a little bit more angry than me, and a lot, and I don't blame Maude whatsoever. But this team shows different flashes of potential compared to past years, because in past years they've had their A game, which is basically, okay, use your talent, score goals, and then win the game, 5-3 or 5-4. But now they can win by just playing defense, and they have a B game now. So things are looking good for the boys. They have an opportunity now. It's just, you need to go on a run. You need to go on a run and see where you're at after that, because this team has a pretty good amount of potential to get a top 8 spot in the Eastern Conference. And so for our next segment, we're going to dive into the stats throughout the first half of the season. Anyone in the chat, if you have anything to say about, overall, like your assessment of this season so far in the first 41 games, please throw them in, and we'll talk about them. So, but before we do that, though, I just want to talk about Hyperdrive Hockey, which is the leading podcast here for Game Over, and is on the YouTube page, and is hosted by Max, Daphne, and Kevin, and is on every Tuesday and Friday here on Game Over. You can access that on all platforms. I personally watch it on YouTube, but I'm not going to force you to pick whatever you want, whichever one you want. So be sure to check that out. They have 2 episodes per week, and they do a great job at covering all things hockey across the world. As Ty puts in a comment here, most shutouts overall to 10. Okay, wow, we had 10 shutouts in 2017 apparently. Thank you for throwing that in the chat, Ty. I had no idea we had 10 from, I guess it would have been Condon and Anderson in that year, and we were very good defensively. I remember that was the trap year for Guy Boucher. And Ty also says, throw out Forsberg if he falters again, throw him on waivers. You know what? I was thinking about this morning, right? Because you could save some cap space if you put him on waivers. And at the end of the day, he's a backup goaltender. So how much of a leash should you have, right? It's not like you're Tristan Jarry where you're making $5 million for the next 3 or 4 seasons. Or you throw him down to the minors to, reset his brain a little bit, get his confidence up. This time around, you're dealing with a backup goaltender who simply just hasn't really put up the performance that we have really wanted over the past couple of years. So before we talk about the goaltending a little bit later, and we're also going to talk about the Ridley Gregg extension as well, which came as a little bit of a surprise. I'm not going to lie. I woke up and I was like, oh, okay, cool. This was yesterday morning, and shout out Ridley. He had a good game tonight. Being slow to start the year, but we'll talk about him a little bit later. Okay, so I'm not going to go into the advanced analytics too much. I'm just going to keep it simple so far. And this is just for clarity, this is after 40 games because the NHL stats have not updated. But I'm going to list off some stats here. And first off, I'm going to talk about the goals for, which surprisingly, this team is 22nd in goals for in the NHL. Not the best. I thought it would have been a little bit better, and it's a little bit of a change, right? Because you're used to this team, Stützle being a point per game, Batherson having 70 points, and like Giroux having 70. But I think this team has, taken 1 step back and 2 steps forward, that sort of thing. Like you have to cut out the bad things in order to just get more points on the board and sacrifice some offense for some defense. And I'll take that. I prefer that because I want this team to be in the mix for the playoffs. And, I want to cheer for games 75 to 82 because we just simply haven't had that over the past, 8 years or whatever. I've lost count at this rate. Goals against. This team is 12th. I think they were at 2.85 goals against per game, if I'm correct on that. That is very good, and that I think is where the coaching comes into play. Shout out Nolan Baumgartner for, he's the lead defensive coach for this team. If it's all him, then I'll give all the credit in the world to him because, of course, our coaching staff is new, but they have really done a great job at just hounding it in for these players to play as a 5-man unit, protect the house out front too. I believe there's more blocked shots this year. And this team always was good in terms of possession in the offensive zone, and that's kind of where you rely on talent, right? Offense is not something you need to work so hard for because you want to be on offense. But for defense, you have to take that next step. It's a mentality. You have to be willing to basically represent it in the defensive zone, or else you're going to be a team that's middle of the pack. And that's what the Sens have been. So good on the coaching staff for having the Sens being 12th in goals against so far this year. I don't know the last time we said that was the case. Probably in 2017. Power play, 8th. I think they're at 23%. So power play is looking good. It's basically the two same units the entire season. It's Sanderson at the top, of course, instead of Chabot, but 8th the power play, you can't complain about that whatsoever. I don't think I would change anything. Having Gaudette out there as well is handy. And then you have some bodies they can throw out there if there's an injury. Like you could put in a Matteo. You can maybe even throw in a Stapchuk if you need to. But then, of course, we're still waiting on David Perron. PK is 22nd. It could be better. And me and Maude talked about this the other day that I think the Sens should add another forward to the mix, especially when it comes to defensively, right? Someone who can go out there and, be on one of the top units. Like it seems like Norris and Giroux are the top unit right now. I don't mind that because Giroux is great on faceoffs. Same thing with Norris. And then you got Pinto Greg, which is another good unit. And then you have Gregor in there, but I don't know if Gregor is the best as an everyday NHL player at this rate. He has 4 goals and 6 points in like 36 games. I would prefer a little bit more offense from there. Just going throughout the lineup, right, you're not going to put in Reinhart. Amadio is a guy who would kill penalties, but right now he's injured. So you probably need another guy in there because you're not going to throw in Batherson, Stutzla, Kachuk. I'm just going through the rest of the forwards. Gaudette's not killing penalties, that's for sure. Cousins has never been a penalty killer, so you need a 6th guy in there. And one thing I would want a little bit more for maybe this coaching staff to tinker with is throwing out Tyler Kleven on the PK a little bit more. Thomas Chabot has been good defensively overall this year. He's had some issues on the PK a little bit, but that's because he hasn't really killed penalties at all throughout his career. The only time that he's gone in there is to substitute for a guy who's been out. And having Kleven out front, and I would say power ranking the PKers, you're probably going for the first pair, you're going Sanderson and I guess Zub. And then I would try and put Kleven and Jensen just for, a couple games, see how that goes. And then you go with Chabot and Matt and Paolo or Hamonic or whatever. Kleven, he's 6'4", he's physical, he has a good stick out there, is a good skater, and he could use a little bit more ice time. And if you want to, really make him specialize in that category, that could be such a valuable thing if this team happens to go on a deep playoff run. So that's something I would switch up just a little bit. But having Giroux and Norris as your first unit, I don't think is ideal. I think Pinto would be a great first penalty killer, and same thing with Ridley Gregg. We've seen Ridley Gregg in the World Juniors do a great job at being like that prototypical third-line center. Pinto is also your prototypical third-line center, and I think that if your third-liners are your top PKers, then that's really ideal. But I think they just need another guy in there to help it out a little bit. And we'll see how they can tighten up on, being 4-on-5 throughout the season. In shots for and shots against, this team is 9th. So the skaters are doing their job. They are. How many teams can you say that are out there that are in the top 10 in shots for and shots against in the league? There's probably 3 or 4, maybe 5. teams that are in that category, that's awesome to see because it knows that the skaters are doing their jobs. Now it just comes down to the goaltending, right? It just comes down to the goaltending at the end of the day. And I don't want to be too much of a hater on goaltending, but that is what hockey is. I think it's 80% goaltending at the end of the day. If your goalie can't save a beach ball, you're not going to win games. You might win some, but overall you're not going to win a whole lot. And this team can put the puck in the back of the net. We know that there's been no issue with that over the years. And last but not least, face-offs, 52.6% in the face-off dot so far this year, which puts them 5th in the NHL. So face-offs are not an issue for this team. You got Giroux, you got Norris, you got Brady. Pinto, I think, is pretty good at them as well. So you have options there. Now it's just sort of that fourth line center. Statchuk's down there. He's doing an okay job, but he has no goals on the season. And I think we're approaching 30 games into the year where he's been on this team. And he's just not putting up a lot of offense right now. He's not hurting the team defensively, which is good. I like that. It's just kind of a body you can throw out there and throw him out for 10 minutes and he's not going to hurt you. But I would ideally add a guy who you can throw on the fourth line center spot and, provide a little bit of offense, but also improve that PK as well. Because this team isn't scoring as much, right? So you kind of got to pick your spots with this team. You're not going all in, right? I don't think we should be adding like 3 forwards and like 2D at the deadline and another goaltender. Like, I think, we're 20 games away basically from the deadline. And ideally, I think we should add 1D, one forward. Although the D, I don't know. I don't know if we need another defensive player really at all. I don't know. Goaltending's, we'll see. I would, for now, don't think about it. Just run with Merilainen because that guy has been pretty good so far. I want to check his save percentage. It wasn't doing so hot after the Dallas game, but right now, after a 30 save shutout, it's probably got to be looking a little bit better. Forsberg, I think, is at like 885. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I want to cheer for you. I really do. But tomorrow I'd go with Merilainen. I would. Ride the hot hand because he could be down in the minors in a week from now. Genuinely, he could. And a hot goalie is a hot goalie. And right now, I don't think he's one of those guys that is mentally fragile in the net. Merilainen is not a big goaltender whatsoever. I think he is 6'2" or 6'3". He's had to battle his entire career because when you look back on the 2020 draft, he was not ranked whatsoever. And then all of a sudden, this 3rd-round pick comes up, and it's a virtual draft and everything. And Merilainen gets picked, and everyone's like, who is this guy? Like, okay, he's played games in the Finnish U20 league. Why are we picking him in the 3rd round? And it's looking pretty good right now. He doesn't have the crazy stats like a lot of goaltenders might have in the AHL, but he also just hasn't had the reps. But I have trust that this guy can, have the effort in the net every night and really battle it out. And I feel like when you're a goaltender and you're just feeling good about your game, you're going to be good overall because the play comes to you. You just got to make the saves and not overthink it. And I think that's been one issue with Mads Søgaard. Ideally, Søgaard's in the net right now. He should be because he was 3rd on the depth chart for this team throughout the years. And this year as well. And Merilainen has been the prototypical backup in the AHL just because of, Søgaard was a 2nd-round pick. He's 6'8", I think, and Merilainen was a 3rd-round pick and is a year and a half younger than him. But Merilainen is on his way of passing him. Now, there's still a little bit of leg way to go, but I think they did the good job by putting Søgaard in the minors because he has probably the higher ceiling than Merilainen. But Merilainen battles. He battles out there, and I feel more safe with him in an NHL crease than Søgaard would. And right now, more than Forsberg. So it's a weird thing to say out loud because he's 4th on our depth chart, but here we are. As Ty says, I like the team to add one left D 7th defenseman with playoff experience. Beside Jensen and Hamonic, there are no playoff experience on the back end, and I don't want Hammer playing. Yes, Hammer has not been, your ideal best defenseman out there. I think he's been okay considering our expectations this year, especially playing top 4 minutes for a good 20 games or so. Uh, Thing is, he can't be on the third pair because if you pair him with Kleben, there's basically no puck transportation back there. So he's ideally your seventh D. I guess there could be better options out there, but if you're kind of criticizing the seventh D and who you're going to add, there's not going to be much of an issue. However, though, right? And I support your claim to get a lefty seventh defenseman because if Chabot or Sanderson goes down, that means Kleben steps in the top four. I don't know how ideal that is right now. And we've been very fortunate that Sanderson and Chabot have played every single game this year. And Kleben, too, I think. There's been no injuries on the left side. But if Sanderson goes down, Chabot's back up to the first pair, Kleben's to the second. And then you're throwing in, I don't know who you're bringing up from Belleville because their left side on D is, there are some guys back there, of course, but not really a whole lot of NHL experience. There's Jeremy Davies, I guess you could throw in there for the power play maybe. But yeah, I would add, you know what? I'm just thinking of a guy, Eric Brandstrom. Eric Brandstrom can play both sides. He can move the puck. He's not going to hurt you that much. You have enough penalty killers on this team that can play it, so you don't need to put Brandstrom out there. It's that's all gone in the past anyway with Brandy, but that's your kind of your guy you're looking for because I don't think they lack size in the back end. They could add a little bit more, but overall I think they're doing just fine. Before we head into the final segment here, if you have any comments to throw in, anyone in the chat, please just throw them in there and I will read them throughout to this recap here. But I just want to talk about La Ruche, which is a crowdfunding platform for Game Over, and we are looking to raise $15,000 so we can get more opportunities and hire more people. So if you have any recommendations or anything like that, please throw them on our YouTube page, or you can also just look on our website as well at gameover.com. Let's talk about Ridley Gregg. He picked up an assist today on the Shane Pinto shorthanded goal. He's been much better as of late. He had a tough start to the season, and he was thrown into some opportunities in the top six, and I think that's maybe where they see him down the line, sort of as like the sixth guy in the top six, because he has offensive potential, but there's a lot to like with this player. It's just every time I see him, I say, hey, there's still more that he can. He has the drive, he has the character, he has the skill. He was never the biggest guy though. That was the issue. He was always trying to bulk up as much as he can. And you saw that in the video of him signing the contract. He looks pretty jacked right now, especially for a hockey player too. A lot of their weight is in their lower body, and then their upper body's, kind of average, I guess you could say. But with him, yeah, he's looking big. He's got some big arms and stuff. And he's really had to put in the effort to get that weight up, especially because he was never the biggest guy just to start off. And you can survive with that in junior and to some degree in the minors. But the NHL, it is a tough league. You are going to get a hit every single shift, especially when you're a pest like Greg is and you have that target on your back with the empty netter goal. But yeah, he has a decently high ceiling. I don't know what it is. Like, I could see him hitting 50 to 60 points one day. Maybe not every year, but this is a player that can be a very valuable piece in a playoff run. And he can play center, he can play wing. It's a very important piece just to have locked up. And him signing a 4-year deal at $3.25 million isn't bad. I think this is a case where Steve Stais is buying low a little bit. And maybe identifying that, okay, he hasn't had the hottest start offensively to start the year. Let's just get him locked up right now. 4-year deal. That will expire when he is 26. And I was curious about this because I thought maybe he would have been a UFA at the end of the deal, but no, he is an RFA because Ridley Gregg is an August birthday in 2002. So he will be 26 when July 1st, I think it would be 2029, I think, when that, no, it would be 2028, I believe, when that deal expires. So Ridley Gregg is locked up and he's going to be an RFA at the end of that contract. And this contract could be equal to its value next year. I don't know about right now, but you know what? He's on his ELC right now, so it does not matter whatsoever. And yeah, this organization values Ridley Gregg very high. You kind of see it from the start. I thought maybe like he could be a trade chip in some sort of other move, but that's not going to happen now, of course. So right now you kind of have the pieces going forward. You have Brady, Norris, and Batherson top line, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Timmy down the middle on the second line. And then on the third line, you got Ridley Gregg and Shane Pinto, who also have a little bit more potential there to give. And maybe they become top six guys, but I would be okay with Pinto and Gregg being mainstays on the third line. Now it's just about, Giroux. Giroux's there. How much longer can he last being a top six player? And will he want to sign here as well? Because that's a guy that I think you can keep until he's 40 and ready to hang him up. I think that's a guy you can stick on your fourth line one day and he'll do just a fine job because the hockey IQ is always going to be there with Giroux. And his speed's not bad and he can take faceoffs. So he's always going to have a spot here in Ottawa, I think. It's just, does he want to keep it? Because that's a guy that wants it more than anyone else in the league. And he needs to win a cup, obviously. And this season is so important overall. Not, of course, to make the playoffs, but also for Giroux to want to have Giroux to stick around. Because he came home, right? He came home his first time being a free agent. I think his wife's from Ottawa as well, and he has 3 kids or something like that. He has roots here, right? But he's not at the end of his career. Like, he is still such a valuable player. You saw that tonight. He basically had the best game of the year, not of his career, obviously. But 3 assists, and he was all over the puck defensively. His stick was really good on the penalty kill. And it's weird, like, he was never a penalty killer, I don't think, in Philly. Giroux in his prime was insanely good. The captain of the Flyers was so good on the power play and had this crazy vision. Him and Voracek were one of the best dynamic duos of the league, but that was like 10 years ago, right? He's 37, about to be this month. So, he's pushing 40, but he's still on pace for around 57 points, I believe, on the season. And I think, going back to Ridley Gregg, I think that's a perfect mentor for him. Gregg, I believe, has 13 points on the season. So he's on pace for 26. Not ideal, I guess. If you're a third liner, I think you probably want to be in the 35 to 40 point range if you're having a really good season. But I like where Gregg's at right now. I want to rush him, though. I want to rush him, keep him in the bottom 6, and he's going to do fine. And I think he'll figure out on the power play a little bit more as well. Just because he's on the second unit, and usually you don't get a whole lot of reps there. Pinto is being used to the second unit, I think, at this rate. And then Giroux is just so good on the power play, it doesn't even matter. Gregg, I think, will figure out on the power play, and he's just such a valuable player to kind of throw around your lineup. I think down the line, though. He's bulked up now as well. I think this is a good contract overall. At the end of the day, I don't think that there's really any issue there whatsoever. And now to think of it, how many RFAs do we have to sign this year? It would be JBD, who's injured right now. Clevin, who you gotta wonder, because he doesn't score. He scored today, but that was his 3rd point of the year, so he's on pace for 6. How much does he get? Right, probably gets like a 2-year deal at 1.3 maybe, and that's a good contract. Especially Clevin's gonna be so valuable down the stretch. Greg's locked up. Pinto's doesn't have a contract next year, or in 2 years, sorry, but he has a contract next year. Now you just got to worry about Giroux, I guess. Cousins, you could throw it in the mix. Perron's here next year. Amadio's here next year. So come to think of it, there's not really a whole lot of guys that need contracts. Anton Forsberg, I guess, but I don't know. Like, there's not. Allmark's locked up, so that's good. So it's been a steady amount of business by Steve Staios. I think he's done a fair job overall as the GM of the Ottawa Senators in these past 12 months overall. Yeah, Clevin and JBD are the two RFAs. That's it, right? That's 2 third pair D. That's it. Like, you don't got to worry about anything else. That's going to take up what, like $3 million max. And JBD, I don't think is really going to break the bank. I think he deserves another contract, and he's been good on the third pair. I don't know if this organization values him very high, though. And yeah, Levy, I mean, of course, but I don't think Marilainen's going to get over $1 million. Unless he goes on a hamburger run. But I don't think that's going to happen because we have Linus in the net. And yeah, overall, just to wrap up this show here, for anyone listening, I hope you feel confident in this team. I don't want to say, oh, it's different this year, because that's such a cliche saying. But this team has the foundation, and as long as they play their game, I think they can make the playoffs. I think they can. They're lucky in the sense that there is 2 spots available that are there for the taking. But this team can't have stinkers like Buffalo. They can't have another one for another 15 to 20 games at this rate, I think. There's going to be a lot of home games too, right? So you have to take advantage of those opportunities. But the thing is that, like, this team can win in any circumstance now. In past years, if they're on the home ice, they're probably going to win, I would say. They've always had a good home record, but then they go on the road and they can win in maybe 5 or 6 barns, and that's it. But I have all the confidence in the world that this team can win games on the road, and there's more games at home, so I think you'll take that at the end of the day. Most teams in the NHL are better at home anyway, so you got to take that bet. And we'll see you tomorrow against Dallas. I think it is a 5 o'clock Eastern start. Didn't play Dallas too long ago, about 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately lost that game. I believe we had the lead at 2-1 or 2-0 actually, I think. So we're going to be at home. Please wear the black jerseys. Don't wear the white jerseys. I'm sick of seeing the white jerseys. Even wear them on the road if you can. Because, man, I think we're at a 11-game streak of wearing the white jerseys. We got to get some alternates in there as well. I would love to see some gold jerseys for the Sens. That would be awesome. A gold jersey with the logo on it with some red in there. I think that would be a very good alternate. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in here tonight, I guess, whatever you want to call it, on Game Over. Hopefully everyone has a good night, Saturday night. Go enjoy it, and we'll see you tomorrow here on Game Over for a game against the Dallas Stars and your Ottawa Senators. We're just going to hit into the second half of the season, and it should be a good one here on Game Over and for the rest of the Sens. So thank you everyone for tuning in tonight, and good night.